Good morning, everyone. I'm Ian, just not exactly the version you were maybe expecting. I am the AI version of Ian Dade, Operations Manager at StoreFeeder. Slightly more animated, definitely slimmer, and less likely to go off on a tangent about warehouse processes. Now, the real Ian is somewhere nearby, and in a moment he'll take over properly. But before he does, let me set the scene for what you're about to experience in this session. It's all about operational maturity. In other words, how warehouse operations need to evolve as e-commerce businesses grow. Because growth is exciting. More orders, more customers, more sales. But it also creates pressure. Today, Ian will walk through how businesses can move from manual fulfillment to structured, scalable operations to help combat that pressure and build a warehouse that scales and grows with your sales. Later in the session, he'll be joined on stage by Jared Meakin. Many of you will know Jared, and he'll be showing you all some of the exciting new store feeder features within the WMS. There'll also be some live demos. What could possibly go wrong? But seriously, the key message of the session is simple. Scaling e-commerce is not just about selling more. It's about building operations that can keep up. So let's get going. Please welcome StoreFeeder's Operation Manager, self-confessed warehouse geek, and the only man who can talk for hours about pallets. Come on up, Ian.
There we go. So, good morning, everyone. Thanks to my AI doppelganger for that wonderful introduction. Not too sure about the slimmer part, but I'll let him off. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ian Dade, and I'm the operations manager here at StoreFeeder. And as my AI doppelganger said, today I want to talk to you about something that every growing e-commerce business eventually runs into, and that's operational maturity. Now, if you're already running a mature operation, this session's still very much for you, because while I will explain what operational maturity means and what I mean by that, I will also show you the latest StoreFeeder developments that are designed specifically to support and enhance mature business operations even more than we currently do. So throughout this session, I'll be joined by Jared later on, and we'll be introducing and demoing several new features, most of which will be live on our beta testing program really soon. And these include, these include a new scheduled pick waves functionality within the software, some enhancements to our currently well-utilized scan dispatch page, and a brand new scan dispatch through our PDAs. But this session is not just about theory. Like I say, we're going to be showing you these live demos and the new features. It's also all about how warehouse operations evolve as businesses grow, and how the right systems and workflows will stop your warehouse from becoming a bottleneck in your business. Now, the strange things about warehouse operations is this. Most people don't realize they have a warehouse problem until it actually becomes a problem. And I want to start with a moment that almost every growing e-commerce company experiences at some stage. It's late November, it's Black Friday week probably. Orders are flooding in faster than ever, and at first that feels really exciting for your business. Your sales are up, the business is growing, but then you suddenly start to hear the warehouse making noises in all the wrong sort of ways. You hear somebody asking where stock is. You see pickers wandering around aimlessly with pieces of paper in their hand. And suddenly you just notice that the telephone's ringing slightly more because customers are just going, where's my order? Or even worse, I've received the wrong item in my order. And you can physically feel your warehouse operations slowing down. And what suddenly looked like success on the front end with increased sales is suddenly exposing weaknesses behind the scenes in your warehouse. And the question suddenly changes from, can we sell more as a business, to can our warehouse operations actually support the growth that we're generating? So ask yourself this question. If your order volumes doubled tomorrow, would your warehouse be able to cope for the next month? It's a very serious question that you need to ask, and this is what operational maturity is about. It's not reacting to growth after things break, but building warehouse operations that are prepared for that growth before it arrives. So we want to talk about what I call the the operational maturity curve. Warehouses very rarely break all at once. They break gradually, and that's usually one workaround at a time. At first, your growth feels really exciting. As I said, orders increase, sales increase, and the business feels really successful. But underneath that success, your operational pressure is quietly starting to build. And most e-commerce businesses move through the same journey as they grow. what we call the operational maturity curve. Now this curve starts with small operations, one-man bands, small teams, and it moves from a small setup with manual fulfillment right the way through to a fully operational warehouse with numerous staff and numerous selling channels, right the way through to maybe even a multiple warehouse operation. But the key message is that as this operational maturity improves, they have to improve their efficiency, accuracy, capacity, and scalability, and this also reduces the cost per order to your business. So some of you here today might be at the beginning of that curve, right down at the bottom of that curve, and others may be already shipping thousands of orders a day. But the truth is that the operational maturity, it's not a finish line. Even highly developed businesses and warehouse operations still face new pressures as they continue to grow. So wherever you are on this curve, whether you're just starting to formalize your warehouse processes or whether you're running a mature fulfillment operation, the pattern to getting there is usually the same. So most businesses begin with what I would call manual fulfillment. The orders come in, somebody prints them, a picker walks around the warehouse finding the products, and the inventory might live on spreadsheets or actually on the marketplaces themselves. Or more dangerously, it might live inside people's heads. But at small scale, that works. We've all been into warehouses where it's working perfectly well at that stage. You know where the products are. You recognize products visually. You know which orders matter most important, which ones you've got to get out quickly. And more importantly, you also know how to fix problems as they arise. And for a while, like I said, that works. Until your growth starts to expose it. Stock becomes unreliable, mispicks increase, people spend more time searching for products than picking them. And you can physically feel the warehouse operation slowing down. And I speak from experience, because as that lovely picture on the screen now shows, Brian and I work for a 3PL. A lot of you might know that. They're actually in the room today. I don't know where they are, but they're here today. And we found ourselves in that exact situation, that the operation was not building as fast as the sales. And when I think back to those chaotic days before we had any form of WMS in the warehouse, I'm amazed we actually got any orders out at all, let alone accurately. We were manually producing shipping labels on a PC. We were working from endless pieces of paper. We were trying to hold the whole operation together just through our experience and memory of products and customers. And I remember one peak period where the warehouse had completely outgrown the operation beneath it. We had paper everywhere. There was temporary staff walking around aimlessly because they didn't know the products or where they were. We had people queuing for printers. And that was the moment that we as a business realized that the sales had scaled, but our operation underneath it hadn't. And honestly, that daily frustration is one of the main reasons that Brian wrote StoreFeeder, and I helped him to put the warehouse operations in place. And the dangerous thing about warehouse mistakes is eventually the customers feel every single one of them. The warehouse mistakes don't stay in the warehouse. Just think about that. They become returns, they become support tickets, they become negative reviews, and ultimately they can even cause lost loyalty. Just to hone in on a couple of stats there, 23% of e-commerce returns happened because the customer received the wrong item. That's quite a staggering amount, and something that is easily avoidable with the right processes in place in your warehouse. And Brian touched on this one earlier. Over 76% of shoppers say that delivery delays make them consider switching retailers. And again, part of that delay could just be down to your operation not being able to fulfill all of your orders on time each day. So every single operational mistake eventually becomes a customer experience problem. And the harsh reality is that picking and packing errors and inventory inaccuracies will hit your margins directly. Because growth creates complexity. And this is a challenge that growing businesses eventually run into. Your sales grow faster than your operations mature. And at first, your teams compensate. People work harder, longer hours. They put in more manual fixes and more workarounds. But that creates more and more complexity within the operation. And eventually, that just catches up. Because what works at 100 orders suddenly doesn't and starts breaking at 1,000 orders a day. The warehouse becomes reactive. The operation becomes dependent on individuals. And at growth, and when the growth is there, which it feels really exciting, it suddenly starts creating operational stress. And that's the point where many businesses realize something important, that generating the demand for your products is only half the challenge. The real challenge is running a warehouse that can operationally support that growth. Because if fulfillment cannot scale alongside the sales, then the warehouse becomes your bottleneck. And even the most established of businesses in the audience here today have gone through that pain. And this raises the next question. So what does a warehouse that is built for scale actually look like? So what needs to change once businesses realize that manual fulfillment no longer scales? And the answer is structure. Because scalable warehouses are not built around people remembering things. They're built around repeatable, I pressed the wrong button there. Oh no, that's me, sorry. There we go. They're built about repeatable processes. And the biggest shift grown warehouses make is moving from person-driven to system-led fulfillment. In immature operations, this knowledge lives in people's heads. There's always someone who knows where the stock is, which order needs to go out first, and how to fix those problems. And again, that works, right until the day that person's off sick or they're on holiday, and then the business just comes to a halt. And suddenly you start hearing dangerous questions in the warehouse. Where is my stock? Where is this stock? Which product goes to this order? Why isn't the stock here? And these are questions you should never hear in a warehouse, but this is what person-driven fulfillment looks like. It works at a level, but it doesn't scale. So scalable warehouses remove those operational decisions from individuals and place them into a structured workflow inside the WMS. The system guides the operations. Pickers are directed, products are validated, and packers are guided at every stage, and your inventory is controlled and tracked. But importantly, the warehouse becomes repeatable, and the warehouse suddenly starts becoming predictable. So again, the established businesses in the audience will have worked hard and adopted the tools within StoreFeeder currently, which help their warehouse operations make this switch to the maturity. Things like barcode scanning, things like multiple location inventory, tote picking, product-led dispatch, shipping rules, optimized picking routes, suggested transfers. The list goes on with the tools that we can use to help these businesses gain their maturity. And instead of relying on people remembering how the warehouse works, the system now starts guiding that process. And that shift has a massive operational impact. So we've seen customers, and I think all of them are in the room today actually, move from this chaotic, manual, paper-led fulfillment into highly scalable, mature operations simply by embracing the structured workflow tools inside StoreFeeder. Ransom Spares, I know they're here, and Charlie was on stage last time we did this, so I remember when we first met them, they were really growing fast, really quickly. They had a really busy warehouse, but every member of staff was under constant pressure. The operation depended so heavily on the experienced people just making it work. But once they embraced the structured workflows and the system-led process that we introduced to them through StoreFeeder, their throughput improved dramatically, as their statement shows there. And we saw the exact same thing with Black Cat Medicines. Again, I know these guys are in the room. When I first went to see them, they didn't even have stock locations in their warehouse. Now, I've spoken to Gary about this morning. He doesn't mind me saying this, but everything existed in people's heads. But today, I think it's probably about 10 years since I first met them, they're actually gone from processing a few hundred orders a week to actually now doing thousands of orders a day, just because they adopted these structured workflows within StoreFeeder, and it helped them to scale their business. And what's clear about mature warehouse operations is they're built around a few key principles. So the first one is visibility. As the warehouse grows, inventory accuracy becomes critical. If the system says stock exists but the shelf is empty, then everything slows down. Pickers start to search, orders get delayed, and customer experience ultimately suffers. And mature warehouses rely on real-time visibility, not assumptions, not memory, but actual visibility. They know where the stock is, they know what needs replenishing, and they know what needs moving before the fulfillment operation is actually impacted. And this is where the tools that I mentioned earlier, multi-location inventory, replenishment workflows, suggested transports, just become incredibly important to the operation. Because scalable warehouses need that visibility before the problem happens, not after it. And the second principle is validation. At a small scale, occasional mistakes just feel manageable, they're fine. But again, at a larger scale, even those tiny error rates just become expensive. And that's why validating and reducing human error matters so much. Instead of relying on visual checking, the system validates the process, ensuring the right item for the right order. And that dramatically reduces the incorrect shipment and returns, as well as reducing that unnecessary labor within the process. No need for double checking, no need for a human to physically validate that the correct item's gone with the order. So it removes that unnecessary labor. Remember that stat which I said 23% of all orders come back or returns because the wrong item was shipped. Validation at the correct places massively reduces that from happening. And that's why the features like the validation through the PDA picking process and the product-led dispatch features that we've got within the software have become such valuable tools for the growing warehouses that use StoreFeeder. Because the system is actively helping to remove that opportunity for human error before the parcel ever leaves the building. And they ensure that the right product is being passed to the next stage of the fulfillment process. So from picking to packing, we ensure that the correct item is picked, which means the packers have got the correct items to pack. And when they've got the correct items to pack, that means that packing to the end customer through that validation also becomes correct. And the final key element is standardization. So earlier we talked about how warehouses are becoming bottlenecks in our operation as volumes grow. And the reality is that the biggest bottlenecks are often hidden. They're not obvious. It could be excessive walking, it could be package bench congestion, it could be there's too much manual decision making within the organization. It could even be poor warehouse layout. And I keep going back to this. Again, at 100 orders a day, these inefficiencies may not matter too much, but at 1,000 orders a day, they become serious operational problems. The warehouses that scale successfully are the ones that remove these inefficiencies before the growth exposes them. Because operational maturity is not about making people work harder. It's about designing the operations that continue working for the people who use them as the volumes increase. So when a warehouse is built for scale, picking, packing, and dispatch need to follow consistent, repeatable workflows, which I call process standardization. So every order is processed and picked the same way. Every picker follows the same steps. Every packer follows the instructions on the screen. And when the workflows become standardized, your training becomes easier, your throughput improves, your processes become more predictable and repeatable, and scaling becomes a lot less chaotic for your business. And to put it into one sort of sentence, the warehouse stops reacting to the growth and actually starts supporting it. And it makes those operations predictable and repeatable. I keep going back to those words. But most importantly, that means it becomes scalable, which is essential when you're experiencing growth in sales. And that brings us one step closer to our first brand new feature announcement. Now, when we talk about automating the work in this context, I don't mean fancy robots like AI or conveyor belts whizzing stuff everywhere like Amazon warehouses. What we're talking about is creating a warehouse where the system organizes the work for you, automates those processes. Because as warehouses mature and other challenges appear, work coordination suddenly becomes an issue. So in many warehouses, people are still manually deciding which orders get picked first, which ones are urgent. How do I prioritize which channels orders need to be done to hit our SLAs, or which carrier cutoffs matter the most? And as order volumes increase, that coordination becomes harder and harder to manage. The warehouse team are effectively scheduling the system and they are constantly managing the workflow in the team manually. And in my experience, I'm harking back to my days in the warehouse again, this usually means a very stressed out warehouse manager and a lot of shouting. And there is a reason why I've got no hair. I can't ever recall a picker coming up to me and going, Ian, I need some more orders, please. It just doesn't happen. So the manual monitoring and allocation of work becomes an inefficiency in itself. And we've worked so hard through putting other processes into place to remove inefficiencies within the warehouse. But that's exactly why we've built our first brand new feature. So I'd like to introduce you to scheduled pick waves. So imagine, instead of having to watch the order queue and release the work manually, that the system could just organize and release those orders for processing, picking and packing automatically based on the rules that you defined. Well, what a great tool that would be. Well, very pleased to say that our brand new scheduled pick waves feature is going to allow that to happen. StoreFeeder will now automatically generate pick waves based on the operational rules that you define. That could be prioritize Amazon Prime orders until 3 o'clock. It could be prioritize next day shipping delivery orders before carrier cutoff times. And then you can also create pick waves based on an order count or a unit of count. And once those rules are set, the system just takes over. The orders import normally, but StoreFeeder is constantly monitoring them. And when the criteria that you've set is met, the system just creates a pick wave. So no more manual coordination, no more waiting for supervisors, and no more constant monitoring of orders. And this goes one step further, because if you pick through the StoreFeeder PDA, and I know there's some people in here who don't, so if you don't pick through the PDA, we have a big stand over there where you can go and speak to Stephen and Steve about the PDA. So when a new pick wave is created and you're using the PDA to pick, a notification will be sent straight to the handheld device informing the user that they've got a new pick wave available to pick. And that stops that unproductive wait for pickers to be told what to do next, and stops those questions of, hey, I need more orders, please. And even more good news is that the process just runs continuously. So the warehouse always has work to go, ready to go, even overnight. So pick waves can be ready before the warehouse team even arrive at the warehouse in the morning. And that shifts fulfillment away from being reactive and towards a more automated operational flow. What scheduled pick waves really demonstrates is the direction that our warehouse operations are moving in. They're working more towards less manual coordination and more intelligent automation of the warehouse processes. So ultimately, what we're working towards here is your warehouse team will process the orders, but StoreFeeder will organize that work for you. And that same philosophy applies to our dispatch accuracy as well. As orders volumes grow, accuracy becomes even more important. So barcode validation, as I've said before, is one of the most valuable tools inside StoreFeeder. It powers all of the great stuff that we do. Features like validation through the PDA picking that we discussed earlier, the product-led dispatch and the barcode scan validations that we have at key points like goods inwards, transfers, etc., everywhere within the supply chain, within the warehouse chain. And these have already helped customers dramatically reduce errors going out the door. But we've also introduced two more significant upgrades to the dispatch operations within StoreFeeder, which we're about to show you now as well. So the first of those improvements is, wrong button, the first of those improvements is the scan dispatch being able to do now through the PDA or handheld device. The mobile app that we offer has always had the ability to dispatch orders one by one, but it's never offered the same efficiencies that product-led dispatch has offered on the main StoreFeeder UI until now. And our new feature now allows operators to complete the product-led dispatch directly from their handheld device. So instead of requiring a full PC setup on every packing bench, the operator can simply use the handheld device they used to pick the orders. So a packing bench can go from looking cluttered, but that's not really a packing bench that I recognise from anywhere else as I've worked in. There we go, that's better. That looks a bit more like the ones that I'm used to. But now we can remove all that junk from the desk and go to having more bench space for the packing operation and less electronic kit taking up that valuable space on the bench. So there'll be no monitor, no PC, no keyboard, no USB scanner. All we need is a label printer. So your typical workflow could now look like this. The picker completes their picking run on the PDA. They bring their trolley to a packing station. Straight from the handheld device, they simply select the packing bench that they're working to, and that will connect them to the label printer that's on that bench. And from there, the operator can simply complete the dispatch process directly from the handheld device. And our second improvement is more enhancements to our currently well-utilized scan dispatch page. So we've significantly enhanced this with some great new features. It builds on the barcode validation functionality at dispatch that StoreFeeder users already know, they already benefit from, but it takes it another step further by making the process more intuitive, more operator-friendly, and much more visible from the operator's point of view. And this includes two new things. First one is suggestive packaging. It's been a long time desire of mine, but we've finally got there, that the system can now display the correct packaging size for the order on the screen for the packer to see. That removes another decision from the operator and standardizes the packing process and in the warehouse even more than it currently does now. And the second one is multi-box visibility. So lots of orders these days go out in more than one box. So operators can now assign products to specific boxes during that packing process when more than one box is required. This gives complete package level visibility of your orders. And this becomes incredibly valuable for things like international orders, customs queries. There are some carriers in the room, but I will say it, lost parcel investigations, I'll say it underneath my breath, and really helps your customer service support because they can see what it was in each package when the customer rings up. So this isn't replacing our current barcode validation processes, it's evolving it into a more guided, visible, and scalable process for your warehouse. What we're doing here is combining scan validation, operator-friendly workflows, and flexible dispatch tools. They build on the barcode validation functionality that StoreFeeder already uses and that everybody already benefits from. But this is not about replacing that value of the existing feature, it's about improving it. And as a result of these improvements, something very important happens in growing operations in warehouses. They start to gain operational confidence. And that's confidence that the correct items are being shipped, that the packages are documented accurately, and that the warehouse data truly reflects what is actually happening at the packing benches and on the warehouse floor. And when your system is being guided by processes, your team can start trusting it, and something else happens there. The warehouse becomes faster, it becomes more accurate, and it becomes easier to scale, which is the whole point of what I'm talking about today. So, just before we move on to the future of warehousing operations, it's just worth stepping back and looking at what growth actually means to once the core warehouse operations are running efficiently and accurately. So, we've talked about improving speed, accuracy, and control within the warehouse itself, which allows the warehouse to cope with the increased order volumes, increased stock holdings, and increased pressure as the business grows. And when warehouses reach that stage of operational maturity, they're now ready to handle growth for many, many years, and maybe even forever. But for some businesses, and I know there are some businesses in the room today, there's sometimes another step. That growth can mean expanding into multiple warehouses. And this might be to support international expansion, it might be to reduce shipping times, or it could simply be just to manage more inventory that requires more space across multiple locations. But as soon as you introduce those multiple warehouses, the operational complexity starts to increase again. Stock needs to be moved between locations easily. The inventory needs to remain accurate everywhere. You even need to be able to see what's traveling between those warehouse locations. And orders need to be fulfilled from the right place at the right time. And StoreFeeder can handle all of this. I'm not going to go into it now because it affects only a few people in the room, but if you want to speak to me about that afterwards, then please do if you're running or thinking about running a multiple warehouse operation. So you can see that without the StoreFeeder warehouse management system supporting this functionality, the operations could quickly become difficult to manage and lose that vital visibility and control that business owners and warehouse managers require. So as we recap the session, and I know because I've seen them, the sessions that are coming up later today will back up. The future of e-commerce warehousing operations isn't on its way, it's here today, right now. But as StoreFeeder, we never stop looking forwards, and we're always looking at more ways to optimize your warehouses and empower your staff. And that's where warehouse operations are really heading overall. The future isn't more manual work, it's more intelligent systems to help your business and your employees. And if you look at how warehouses have evolved over the past decades, the biggest change hasn't been in the buildings themselves or the structure inside of them, it's been how the decisions are made within that warehouse. In the past, many of those decisions were made manually, as we've just discussed. Remember my chaotic days in the 3PL where somebody typed out a label manually for every single order? Well, today, all those manual decisions and processes are automated inside the system. Instead of that, just typing a label out, we would use something like shipping rules. We would use packaging sizes and quantities, and we would get dispatched done with just one click of a product barcode. One scan of a product barcode. And we're already seeing a shift towards the StoreFeeder system taking on more and more of that automated operational decision making. And the new features that Jared's demonstrated today will show that. Things like the scheduled pick wave creation, starting to automate that once manual flow within the warehouse. And we're also starting to see the beginning of, and I think it probably is the first time somebody's mentioned this, the AI-driven fulfilment optimization coming inside StoreFeeder, where systems can start making smarter operations decisions automatically. And one feature that we're already exploring within the warehouse is a feature called dynamic pick waves. So we've seen scheduled pick waves, and this is dynamic pick waves. So imagine that a picker is already moving through the warehouse, picking a pick wave, and a new order just arrives from channel, and the stock is located further along that picker's route. So instead of waiting for another pick wave to be created later, StoreFeeder will simply inject that order directly into the existing pick wave that's being picked already. The picker won't notice, the packer won't notice, but the operational efficiency will improve dramatically. And that's where warehouse systems are moving. More intelligent, more automated, and ultimately more scalable. And we're also looking at improvements to our popular app to make more everyday tasks PDA-based. I know that will bring a smile to some people's faces in the room. We're looking at making more of these everyday tasks PDA-based to bring quicker and more accurate operations to the warehouse floor. So things like returns and a move towards better validation of transfers are just two of the planned improvements we've got coming up in the next month or so. And another step forward that we're really invested is real-time operational insight. And trust me, we have a fantastic session on this later today with Brian and Sean on the stage. But just to touch on this from a warehouse point of view, warehouse managers increasingly want to understand what's happening across their operations as it happens. Where many orders are waiting to, how many orders are waiting to be picked? What bottlenecks are forming? How efficiently is the warehouse performing? And having that visibility allows operations allows operations to continuously improve. But ultimately, all these trends and the future developments point towards the same outcome. The warehouses that are automated, have automated processes, and are more intelligent, are ultimately more scalable. Where the system organises the work, where humans follow clear workflows, and where warehouses can scale without complexity spiraling out of control. And that brings me back to the core idea that I started with today, operational maturity. Because as I said right at the start, scaling e-commerce successfully isn't just about generating more demand and more orders. It's about building a fulfillment operation in your warehouse that can support that demand reliably, efficiently, and accurately. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from this session today, it's this. Growth is only valuable if your warehouse operation can support it. That's quite a powerful statement, but it's one that needs thinking about. Everybody wants more sales, but can you actually handle those sales within your operation? Because every successful e-commerce business eventually reaches the point where operational maturity matters more than simply generating more orders. Because because growth without structure creates chaos. So today, we've followed the journey of warehouse operational maturity and how warehouses can remove that chaos. We started with the challenges you place on your warehouse when you rely on manual processes as sales grow. That manual way of operating becomes harder to manage, harder to train, and harder to scale. So the first big shift is from person-driven fulfillment to process-driven fulfillment, introducing structure, repeatable processes that reduce errors, improve accuracy, and give teams more confidence in what they're doing. And once that structure is in place, the next challenge became throughput. It's no longer just about whether the warehouse can pick and pack accurately. It's about processing growing order volumes efficiently without people having to manage that flow of work manually. And that's where the new scheduled pick waves feature comes in. So instead of the team organising the work all day, the system starts organising it for them and freeing up that labour. Then we looked at accuracy and visibility of the packing and dispatch stage. As I said many times, barcode validation is such a vital tool within StoreFeeder to so many of our users, and it helps reduce those mistakes, and it's been doing so for many years. But the new enhanced dispatch experience takes that one step further. It really helps stop those errors leaving the warehouse, but it introduces, again, standardised and repeatable and predictable processes. And finally, we looked ahead, because the direction of travel is clear. Warehouse automation processes are becoming more automated. Warehouse decision processes are becoming more automated, more intelligent, and more connected. And StoreFeeder is now capable of taking on more of that coordination work that used to sit with people. Not to replace your warehouse teams, far from it, but to support them, to guide them, to remove that unnecessary decision-making, to reduce mistakes, and ultimately, to make the entire operation easier to scale. And that's what's vital, and that's really what operational maturity really means. It's building warehouse operations that can scale confidently through the key processes that I said earlier: visibility, validation, standardization, and ultimately process automation. And that's what we're designed to do. That's what StoreFeeder wants to help to support you to do. So whether you're looking at introducing scanning for the first time, looking at improving your fulfillment accuracy, or looking at more automation to remove manual decisions, or you simply wanted to scale your throughput, the principle is the same. The companies that succeed long-term in e-commerce are not just the ones that sell the most, they're the ones that fulfill it the best. Scaling e-commerce operations isn't just about selling more, it's about building operations that can keep up. So I'll leave you again with the same question I asked right at the start. If your order volume doubled next month, would your warehouse be able to cope? If the answer is no, please feel free to grab me at any stage throughout the day and we can have a chat. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm open to any questions.
Am I back on? Thank you, Ian. Good news is we've had loads of questions. The bad news is we're actually slightly over by 5 minutes, and we do need to start our next session. I'll tell you what, I will ask one quick question. Yeah. We were asked with automated pickways, what happens if at courier cut-off time the minimum criteria has not been met?
Well, yeah, if you're automating your pick waves, I did forget to mention this, we would always recommend that you have a mop-up pick wave or a manual process at the end of the day, so there aren't any stragglers that are left over.
Sounds good.